I'm really making this, aren't I?
You know, this is one of those topics I always get the idea to make a video about, but then I realize how petty it is and how much effort I would need to go through in order to make it, but here we are.
Because Twitter has made me an unhinged madman. I am constantly surrounded by room temperature IQ nitwits that have zero idea what they're actually talking about. But with my 10,000 IQ, I will show you the error of your heathenous ways. I'm going to systematically dismantle this stupid image and explain how it's only correct in the most technical of ways and fails to properly address the reasons that actually make Goku a bad dad. Before we do anything though, we need to answer one simple question. What is a good dad? Well, I would argue that a good parent is someone that provides for your needs. Not just your physical needs, but your emotional needs as well. I also need to submit to you the idea that just because you love something doesn't necessarily make you a good caretaker for it. I can love a dog all I want, but if I never walk it, I'm not doing a good job. The same applies to parenting. If you're not taking care of your children's needs, you're still not a good parent, despite how much you may love them. I'm also going to analyze characterization within the context of what I'm given. I recognize that if this show was super realistic to the extent that everyone acted like a real person, everyone would be crippled with PTSD. But sometimes, subtle nuances are all there really is. That's code for some of these characters have like 2 personality traits, so I really have to take what I've got. And as an extra note, off-screen time doesn't count. If it was never addressed in the show, it clearly wasn't important enough in the development of Goku's children. Final thing, I'm only going to be discussing the dubs, mostly the Funimation dub. And that's the version I'm familiar with. That's the version I'm sure most Westerner fans are probably familiar with. I don't know if the subtitle versions are different or if the manga significantly changes anything. All I know is that the Funimation dub of Goku is a terrible parent. Now, I know that the Goku is a bad dad narrative is something of a meme in the DBZ community due to Dragon Ball Z Abridged, but let me be perfectly clear. I have always thought Goku was a terrible parent, even from when I was a little boy watching DBZ on Toonami. While it is very nice that Team 4-Star decided to adapt something that I personally agree with, it is a conclusion I have reached entirely from the source material. Now, admittedly, part of this is due to the nature of how DBZ sets up its arcs. Most of the show is people waiting for Goku to show up and save the day. So Gohan can't really interact with his father too much. He can interact with less important characters that aren't going to signal the end of the arc, say, Piccolo. But Goku showing up, being the protagonist and all, pretty much signals the beginning of the end for an arc. When you're watching 20 episodes of Gohan interacting with every other character, except for his father, it can give the impression that other characters are picking up the slack, or that Goku just isn't around that much. So admittedly, there is some bias just based on how the show is set up. That said, Goku still drops the ball. Let's take it from the literal top. To claim that Goku died for Gohan in his fight against Raditz is incredibly misleading. Raditz was going to blow up the planet. Killing Raditz saves the planet. Gohan is technically on the planet. But to say he died for Gohan implies Goku died for him specifically, and not to save the Earth as a whole. That's not being a good dad. That's basic utilitarian calculus. That's a call pretty much anybody would make, even if they fucking hated their kid. I'm not implying Goku does, but I am saying that that's not something unique to being a good parent. Saving the Earth is something anybody would want to do, even at the cost of their life. Even then, I don't really consider saving your kid a mark of a good parent. I just consider it parenting. Full stop. You are literally not a parent anymore when your only child dies. Keeping your kid alive is the core of what being a parent is. To me, this is just showing up for the test. I don't give points for doing the most basic and core function of what is demanded from a dad. We'll talk about the other instance of this later. But right now, we gotta talk about this bullshit. So, believing in your son's power is the most technical turbo cope of this entire image. Everything about the Cell arc demonstrates why Goku is an awful dad and legitimately does not understand the other people around him. In the Cell arc, Goku's grand plan is he wants to have Gohan fight. He doesn't tell him over the course of the year they spend together before the Cell games, and then sends out his son like a goddamn Pokemon to become a murderer at age 11, or everyone dies. All this because Goku wants Gohan to essentially be the new champion of the Earth.
a responsibility and title he never asked for. Not only does this plan place an immense amount of pressure that a boy his age should not be fucking dealing with, it also has a massive flaw that comes exclusively from Goku's ineptness at understanding his own son.
It doesn't matter. He doesn't thirst for battle and mayhem. He's not a fighter like you.
Huh?
Do you want to know what he's thinking? He's not thinking about strength or about competition. He's wondering why his father is standing there, letting him die. And so your son may be the most powerful person in the world, but he's also a scared 11-year-old boy.
Now, the fact that Goku doesn't know that Gohan doesn't like fighting might not seem that bad on its own, but let's just take a look at how many traumatic experiences you would have to ignore to not know this. Gohan's interactions with fighting goes as follows. His uncle kidnaps him, shortly followed by his dad dying. He's left in the wilderness and then trains with a green slug man. He fights for his life, watching as his friends are killed one by one, only just barely able to scrape out a win. Then he goes into space where his neck is snapped. He gets the hell beaten out of him by Space Hitler, and then watches his friends die again. Bear in mind, I'm just listing major fights he had an actually important role in. I could bite the bullet and bring up indirect instances of trauma. Things like watching the Namekians being killed could not have been good for him. Not to mention Goku choosing to stay out in space rather than be with his family, or any other time Goku prioritized fighting over spending time with Gohan. Watching people die horribly and having your father prioritize training over you, I imagine would leave you with bad feelings towards combat on its own, but being beaten and almost killed probably doesn't help either. Friendly reminder that at the start of Dragon Ball Z, he's 4 and is then 11 by the time of the Cell games.
Gee, I wonder why he doesn't like fighting.
Some of these events Goku wasn't there for, so either he never bothered to talk to his son about all these near-death experiences, or didn't put 2 and 2 together, because this is the easiest thing in the world to understand. What's even more damning is that Goku showed up on Namek right as Gohan got his neck snapped. I know for a fact that Goku knows what that looks like, so I can only assume that he looked down at his son, nearly dead on the ground, and went, yeah man, Gohan loves this. This alone, I feel, is enough to prove my point that Goku isn't a capable guardian. This is criminal levels of incompetence. But alas, we have more sins of parenting yet to come. Fast forward a bit, and Goku sacrifices himself to save the Earth. Again, not technically for Gohan, but credit where credit is due, he does give Gohan a nice little pep talk. And then using King Kai, he walks Gohan through how to win. To be clear, I always assumed this was just Gohan's imagination, or just a visual metaphor. I never thought it was like Goku's spirit or anything, just artistic imagery. All of this, I feel, is an acceptable level of parenting, until this shit happens.
Me years ago that stuck with me. She told me I was like a magnet for all the bad guys that were always popping up. And if you think about it, that's not really too far from the truth. I get the feeling that Earth's gonna be way more peaceful if I just stay where I am now. And King Kai agrees with me.
This is stupid on multiple levels. First, Goku, you have a wife and kid. Also, you may know about the second kid coming along the way. A second parent is always better. Why are you opting out of raising your kids and being a good husband on the off chance something will happen? Secondly, this shit makes zero sense. I'd argue the vast majority of problems occur because Goku isn't around. Or, if he wasn't, they would be a lot fucking worse off. I mean, really think about it. Goku was sent to Earth by the Saiyans, which means Raditz is going to show up because his brother was sent there. Okay, fair enough, but eventually the Saiyans or Frieza were going to arrive on Earth, and Goku not being there to defend Earth only makes things worse. Nappa was able to kill everyone because, look at that, Goku wasn't there. Namek with the shit, partly because Goku wasn't there from the start. Even the Red Ribbon Army was going to come back with Cell, regardless if Goku was around or not. I'd argue his presence certainly made things better. Even going as far back as the original Dragon Ball, I'd argue that it's probably better that Goku was around to fight the Red Ribbon Army than, you know, him not being around to do that. Even while Goku is dead, things are still coming to kill everyone, like with Majin Buu. In all situations, Goku not being around only makes everything worse. This is so incredibly counterproductive. I know the reason for this was to try to make a Gohan the main character, but it's done with such little tact that just looks like a bad choice. This results in Goten being 7 years old when he first meets his dad. But no, he's still a good parent, guys. The final thing I need to address with this image is where he comes back during the BoJack movie, which
I don't know if that's even canon, but it doesn't really make up for everything I've just brought up. To be clear, I don't think this makes Goku a bad person. Goku is actually a hell of a guy and does a lot of good. He's just not equipped to raise another living creature. I personally think that this flaw makes Goku a more three-dimensional character. He's not just a god who's good at everything, he's a man who prioritized fighting at the expense of other aspects of his life. This is extremely consistent with his characterization. Being a parent is complicated, and not everyone's good at it. Goku is an amazing savior of the Earth, but he is a horrendous father.